Cargo.
Okay. I mean, what were we just talking about?
I was showing you my latest music video that's not released yet.
Oh yeah,
Yeah, you were asking me about, I think, Sunset Still, one of my
yeah,
last songs, but
yeah. Dude, I remember when you first told me about your music, the way you explained it, it was something about like it was like a mix between like Nirvana and something else. And then I actually listened to it, and that's like I sort of everyone like has like their own description of the music.
yeah.
But like
yeah.
yours was like right on the money. Like I totally understood like what you meant.
Well, I was gonna say, I think that like one struggle of any artist is you work so hard to be an individual and to
Yeah.
be your own thing, and then as soon as you kind of feel like you achieve that, everyone's asking you to compare yourself to other people, like because it's hard to have a concept of something new, so we need to
Yeah.
constantly have a reference so that we can make ourselves like understandable to other people. And I think it was like at first it's difficult to do that, but then when you understand that it really just comes down to your influences, and your influences will kind of show themselves in your music.
Yeah.
And when you can reference that, then it's kind of like, yeah, that's what makes my music.
Yeah. No, actually, I have you ever heard of the book How to Steal Like an Artist?
I've heard of the book, but I have not read it.
Dude, you got to read it. It's
Yeah.
it's like a fun little. It's like a little like square. I feel like you finish in like 2 days.
Yeah,
One of the things that it says in that is like nothing is really
original. Yes.
Everything is stolen, and I feel like so when you hear that, it can be controversial. But like when you think about it, you can never really make anything like extremely unique. There's always gonna be some sort of reference, whether it's a reference of a reference or like there's always gonna be some sort of inspiration. But it's about the way you steal like an artist
Mhm.
is when you actually like do it in a way that's not like cheap. It's not like you just go and like you get like you're like, oh, I want to make music like Kendrick Lamar, and then
Mhm.
like you really badly try to imitate it.
Yeah.
That's like theft, or
So
that's
it's-
yeah, that's like that. But like when you do it like where you actually like understand Kendrick Lamar and like understand like what he's doing, his techniques or whatever, and you take that and take a piece of that and kind of incorporate it. That's how you actually like. That's like meaningful. And you're almost paying homage in a way, you know.
Absolutely. And it's funny that you say that. There are
Yeah.
periods where I actually wanted to be inspired by certain artists, and I would try to listen to all their songs so that I could like unconsciously soak in the inspiration. But it's never a thing that you can consciously do. And I think that's the important thing for people to get, is that you like what you like and you're drawn to what you're drawn to.
Yeah.
And you're going to just automatically start incorporating the things that you really are drawn to in your music and in your art. And it's not something that you can really take conscious control over. It's something that you have to like let work through you.
Yeah.
And that's the most natural way it's going to be. And that's also, I think, the best way to think about it.
Yeah. And I think another important thing. I was watching the Tizo touch. You know Tizo touch.
Yeah.
I was watching
You got the nails, right? In this.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You guys sick. I was watching an interview with him, and he was talking. And I feel like some people have said this before, but it's like, I feel like one of the most powerful exercises you can do when you're making something. What it doesn't even have to be creative, like even a company or whatever it is, right? If you just think of the mindset as like, okay, me as a user, consumer, listener, whatever, right? Like, what would I want?
Exactly.
And I feel like that plays in part to that, because it's like if you think of what you want and you do that, it's going to be all your influences, that the stuff that you find cool, helpful, or whatever it is. Like you're going to mesh all those together to make like the product that me, if I was like a kid listening to music, I would want to listen to, right? It's like,
Absolutely.
I think it's powerful.
And another thing about that too is what I kind of find as I start learning more about music and going deeper into my influences is that things are only as original as your frame of reference for them. So like there are a lot of songs that are hit songs, and to someone who's hearing it on the radio, they're like, I've never heard anything like this before in my life. But then to someone who understands the actual influences, you can actually draw the connection. And it's more a matter of your own exposure, I feel like, as an individual, as opposed to like objective originality. That makes sense.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? It's a weird thing to think about, but like I'll give you an example. So like Led Zeppelin is one of my favorite rock bands of all time. And obviously as like a 14-year-old kid listening to Led Zeppelin for the first time, I'm like I've never heard anything like this in my life, because I grew up listening to like a lot of hip hop and R&B. When I was 14, I heard like real rock music for the first time.
Yeah.
And I'm like, this is completely different from anything I've ever heard of before.
Yeah.
But then obviously you realize that it comes from a lot of blues.
Yeah.
And a lot of those guys. And when you listen to the comparisons, you realize it's not as original as you thought. Like they stole a lot of songs, but it's still new in its own way. Like we're talking about steal like an artist. They definitely did do that. So yeah. And I think it's okay to steal things unconsciously, and it's okay to be inspired by things. And whether you acknowledge it or not, it's like we're all standing on the shoulders of giants, and I think that that's completely okay.
Yeah.
You know?
What's up? I'm Dean from Creative Cargo. Today we are here with Tyler Gunn, a great, would you say you're rock, or is there like a...
Yeah, you could say rock.
Yeah, rock artist out of Toronto. I don't know if I mentioned that already.
Yeah.
He makes awesome stuff, and honestly, he has a really dope perspective. You couldn't tell from the first part of this video, but I'm really excited. Do you want to kind of give a quick intro of how you started doing music and where you're at now?
Yeah, so depends on how long it's going to be, but I think that all kind of creativity stems from a sensitivity.
Okay.
And I think that people who are a little bit more sensitive individuals from the time that they're young, they feel things a little bit more deeply than other people. Those are the people that tend to end up being creative. And I think I've always been that kind of person. Originally, I actually wanted to be an actor.
Really?
When I was like 12, 13, before I ever played a guitar, picked up a guitar, sung a song. I wanted to like be in movies and TV shows and stuff like that. And it didn't really work out. Like that just I never got put on that path. I think with the world of acting, you kind of have to be really pushed into it, and your parents have to help you, or someone has to help you get into that. You have to go to auditions, have someone to drive you to auditions, all that kind of thing. With music, how I got into it, I just really took a fascination. Like I was very fascinated by the guitar, and it was cool because it was something that I could sit and do in my room, and I didn't have to ask anybody to drive me to the audition. I could just sit and play the guitar, and that was something that was completely in my control.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah, yeah.
And I just naturally, it really all the sequence of events, thinking of how it kind of came to be is it's weird. I don't know. It's too much to call it a coincidence, but like I definitely picked it up and I never put it down. And I don't know how long. I think it might have taken a year, and then I was like, I want to do this for the rest of my life. And
really,
yeah, and that was like 9 years ago now.
Wow, holy.
10 years ago, because I'm 24, and that was when I was 14. So
damn.
Yeah.
So like, okay, so I definitely know what you mean when you say pick it up and can't put it down, because I feel like anyone that's been passionate about it, that's a common feeling. But when has the passion stayed with you all throughout, or has there been times where it's kind of been like tested and kind of like up and down?
It's funny that you say that, because I feel like recently it's actually been tested a lot, but it's the way that I like to think about it is it's like it's a call. It's like you're getting the call and you have to pick up the phone, and you can choose to answer the phone. You could choose to let it ring, right? And I think that if it's not really for you, you'll stop picking up the phone and it'll stop ringing. But in my case, it honestly feels like it's not my choice anymore. It's just something that I have to do, and it doesn't matter if I feel differently. Like this feels like it's calling me just as much as I might be trying to call it. I don't know if that makes sense.
Yeah.
Like I'm at a loss for words. I'm gonna do this until the day I die. And I've definitely had my struggles with it and inspiration and all that kind of thing. But it's like a family or a relationship that you have rough patches with, but that's your family, and it's gonna stick with you forever. And it's like it's part of you, and that's kind of how I feel about music, and I grow with it. So whether I feel good about doing it, or if I feel inspired or creative, or if I just feel like absolutely not inspired, that's okay. But I know ultimately that is what I'm supposed to do.
Do you have any sort of ways you deal with that? Like, for example, if you're just feeling super uninspired, do you try to like keep going, or do you give it a rest? And
no, I think it's great to give it a rest sometimes, and like let yourself not be inspired. And I think that there's beauty in non-action and non-doing. I think as a creative, you actually need to spend time doing nothing and sitting with yourself. Like the whole process. I've always thinking about this, like the process for songwriting. You have this feeling within you, and it's not like you have, for me at least, like I want to speak for myself, it's not like I'm inspired by a moment and then later that day I go write the song. For me, it's more of this thing where I have this feeling and it's kind of in the back of my head and it's in my mind and it's in my heart, and I kind of have to sit with it for a little bit, and it might be a day or a week or a month, but that thing kind of sits inside me, and when it's ready to come out, I trust that that's the time when it's supposed to.
Yeah.
And that's the same thing with creativity in general. There's also like discipline is required, but a large part of it, I listen to how I feel, and I trust that those kinds of premonitions and those creative instincts will show themselves when it's like the right time for them to.
Yeah, no, I totally get what you mean, because obviously if you try to force it, then
Yeah, it never, and that's the thing, like with singing specifically, like as a singer, you have to like get into the performance, and it's really an act of non-doing. It's really an act of like letting go, and holding on to resistance never helped me creatively. Some people do really well under that kind of pressure, but for me, I feel like, especially for the kind of music I make, it's at its best when it's actually therapy to me. And you're not gonna like force yourself to have that experience. It's gonna actually happen when it's supposed to. You know what I mean?
Yeah. And I heard someone, I forgot who told me this, but it's like creativity is the one thing you can't put a time limit. Like you can't
Exactly.
can't be like, I need to finish this. Well, I guess you can, like in certain situations, it definitely does happen where you're like, there's a time limit. But if you really just want to be creative, you can't be like, oh, I need to finish this song in a day. Like you need to let it take as long as it needs to take, because
Absolutely.
it's absolutely so important. So you started out playing guitar when you were 14.
Yeah.
But you also, you sing and use vocals in your music. Why did you kind of start singing, or was it around the same time?
Yeah, so that's a funny story. So I had started playing guitar, 14 years old, and when I started, I didn't really have any other intention other than it was just fun. It was cool, and I wanted to like shred.
Yeah.
And a couple of years into playing guitar, I kind of realized I was not a shredder. Like I was no Eddie Van Halen.
Okay.
And I tried to do that thing. I couldn't do it.
Yeah.
It's something I'm still working on now. But I figured, okay, well, if I can't play really, really fast, then maybe I should just sing. Because, if you can play guitar decently and you can sing, like that's kind of cool.
Yeah.
As opposed to just playing guitar decently,
Yeah.
So I was like, let me just learn how to sing. I don't even know if it was an intentionally like, let me learn how to sing. It was just like, let me try it.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And I was not good at it to begin with. No, I could even show you. I could probably send you my voice memos. I have like my whole creative journey from the very first voice memo that I recorded in 2014. I have the whole archive of like my first attempts at singing, and it's rough. It's rough. So like, I don't know, maybe that's inspiration. Like if you don't think, if you can't sing, just keep at it, because one day maybe you'll be able to,
Yeah.
You just gotta enjoy it. And if you enjoy it, you can get into it. And if you can get into it, that's when people can hear your voice and actually be moved by it.
Yeah.
Because a lot of people can sing on pitch, but to have a voice that I feel like moves people, it's like you have to be able to get into that. And that is a skill that is actually different from the physical technique of your voice. And that's not something that can really be taught. It's something that you kind of have to like get into,
Yeah. That's so interesting to think about. Because like I don't even know how you train. Yeah, I guess you can't really like.
The best way I could put it is it's like it's such a funny answer, but it's like learn to feel deeper. Like learn to feel more deeply. And then when you're singing a song, you can get inside the words more deeply, and you can get inside how it feels in your body more deeply. And when you kind of are really just letting your whole body into that experience, then I feel like that's where you start to really have something special. And I'm still working on it, but that's the way that I think about it. And that's kind of the model I've developed in my mind.
So I wanted to ask you, because I feel like you do have a really good sound developed.
Thank you.
Right? So is that something that you've intentionally been developing over time, or did it just come like naturally, or how was that process, if you can kind of put it into words?
Yeah, I think for me specifically, there was always a want to have somebody guide me to my sound. There was always a desire for like someone who could show me what to do and show me how I sound, like show me how to take my song and then produce it in a way that's authentic to me. And I never felt like I really got that. And I felt like that was a blessing in disguise, because it forced me to dig deeper and figure out what that was. And that is still something that I'm figuring out very much to this day. When you're forced to dig deep, you don't go from zero to that hyper polished radio top 40 sound, right? You get something that's kind of weird and quirky and a little bit different and maybe even a little bit off. But that's the authenticity, right? Because you haven't perfected it, And there's a beauty in that, I think, that striving, that not quite there, like this could be something beautiful. I think that's why, as a listener of music, as a fan of music, I gravitate so much towards some of my favorite artists' demos that are not fully fleshed out, right? So I think there's a beauty in like being in the middle of that process and trying to figure it out. You know, I've not quite arrived at, I think, the level of what my sound could be, but I think it's very interesting to me to just strive to get closer and struggle towards getting closer, you know, because that's really what it's about. And just
That's really interesting because I think we've actually had a conversation about this before, but generally the idea of demos being more like you feel more when you listen to a demo.
yes,
Because of that studio process, and that can kind of ruin it, you know, like
there's a reason for that. A demo, and I can speak to this myself because for every song that I've released, I've got like 25 demos, right?
yeah.
And it's like a demo is like it's raw emotion, it's that raw experience, and it's not trying to be something, right? A commercial record, a fully fleshed out record is actually a product, but a demo is not a product. It's just a raw expression, and it's still trying to figure out what it is, right? And I find that with demos, sometimes I'll record the same song and demo of it 3 or 4 times, and in each recording I'll learn something new about that song in that demo by the way like I sing it differently, or the way that the timing is, or sometimes there's like little noises in the back of the demo that actually end up being ideas that I can incorporate to the production. So the demo is like, there's a beauty in it not trying to be something. And because it's not trying to be something, it just is. There's like a magic in that is hard to recreate with producing a record, you know?
Yeah, I really like what you said about the product thing. I think that's so interesting because you're totally right. Like it's a product, so it's not going to connect with people. Well, it will connect, but like there's still that barrier of it being a product at the end of the day versus a demo is completely not.
And that's why I think live music, live experience is so interesting because it's existing in the moment and then it's gone. You know, there's recordings, but to the people there, it's that moment. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And the recording it certainly can't capture the beauty of that moment. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
I think that's a beautiful thing.
I don't know. There's this one Kendrick song. I forgot what it's called. But there's a live version of it and there's like a studio version of it. It's a really good song though. But I swear to God, I've only listened, or like for a certain amount of time, I only listened to the live version. Mm-hmm. And I thought it was like, oh, it's like live, like, but they just like, they made it to be that way. But I learned later it was actually like a live version, and they had like a studio version that was like already there. I think it was like called
On To Pimp a Butterfly.
Yeah, On To Pimp a Butterfly.
Yes.
Dude, the live version is so much better. It's insane, but it's like
magic in it. You're fully connected to the moment. You know, you're not able to do 20,000 takes. It's just then and there, and you're receiving the energy from the crowd.
Yeah.
And there's a magic that you can't replicate. And I think that's why live performances are so beautiful. And I think some of my favorite artists are ones that they have their record as one thing, but then the live show is able to be something completely new and different. And that's actually what I hope to do with my music, is be able to like make my live experience way more improvisational and new and interesting and fun. It's different. And you know, you got to give people a reason to come out to the show.
Yeah.
It's something that they don't get just from listening at home.
Yeah, I think that's really important because also like, I mean, no hate on anyone, but I feel like a lot of live stuff is now like, they just play like the song and they're trying to just like on stage.
Pre-recorded track.
Yeah, there's like definitely a lot of artists, especially in hip hop, that go crazy and they have amazing presence when they're like doing live performances. Mm-hmm. But I think a really cool direction to take is what you're talking about, because then people will they'll listen to your music on Spotify, but they'll actually seek to go to those sort of experiences. I think that's really important.
And like I said, you know, my favorite artists, a lot of them not even alive anymore, but a lot of what I listen to is the one live recording of the performance in like a little cafe in 1994, and it's got shitty quality audio, and it's like there's not even video. It's just the audio, and that's the thing that really connects with me the most.
Yeah.
You know, and I don't know, maybe I'm just like being different for the sake of being different. Just like, like the coffee shop version, but that's just what I connect with. And I don't know, I think that's, you gotta give people an experience like that.
I feel like you might've mentioned this a little bit, but Is there anything else that you'd say is like the toughest part of developing your sound?
The toughest part I'd probably say is like, it can be so tempting to do something that people like and then just keep doing that. And kind of, it's like if you're on the path, right? The straight and narrow path. You might stop and people are like, oh, keep doing this, keep doing this. But as an artist, it's your job not to listen to the people who are consuming your art, but to actually listen to that thing inside of you and keep going. And so I've had this a few times now. I'm still very early on in my career where I'll do one kind of song, and I've got a lot of different types of sounds in my music, both released and not released. And someone will be like, that is what you need to do because that works and I connect with that and that's your sound.
Yeah.
And I'm like, well, that can be tempting to listen to because you're like, well, it looks like this is working and this is gonna work. But I think, it can be difficult to get positive feedback and think that you have to keep doing the same thing over and over again. Mm. But it's important to always be evolving and pushing the barrier and pushing the boundaries. And some of my favorite artists all did that. So
yeah, I think that's so important to also, because I feel like there's also a lot of artists, or just generally as a creator, I think it's really important to listen to yourself, because you can also, if you stray away from what you initially started making, which is obviously you don't have anyone to listen to, so it's whatever that's in you, and you like, let's say you make like 4 types of songs or whatever, right? Then you love all of them or whatever it is, you love all of them, but your audience really likes one of them, and you only make that certain one. Eventually your audience is going to be like, okay, this is not, like, they're going to be like, we like this, I feel like, but at the same time, it's like, you're also going to become that guy that makes that, you know?
For sure. And in the beginning, there's nothing really to lose because like the audience is obviously a lot smaller than what you hope for it to be. So I don't think there's any harm in just experimenting and doing different things and really, really surprising yourself with what you can do. Yeah.
I love to see, like, what has been your experience with experimenting, and how has that kind of helped you in your development, your developing of a sound?
Yeah, I think you have to experiment because the reality of it is there's no script. You could watch a million YouTube tutorials. You could try to recreate your favorite song. Yeah. But okay, that's actually something that's interesting. So what I find is that where experimentation comes in a lot of the times is you trying to copy something, but you failing at being able to copy it. Yeah. So, and then you failing at being able to copy it actually gives you your unique thing. Yeah. And that's happened to me so many times where it's like I'm actually trying to do something very specific that I heard and I'm inspired by, and I fail so miserably at that. But what I get is something that's actually different and unique. And to me, that is a funny, like, cliche, but that's just my experience, and I think that's a beautiful thing.
You know what's so funny? Remember the book? Yeah, that's like an exact quote from the book.
Oh, is it?
Actually, yeah.
Maybe I did read it and forgot.
No, that's so powerful though, because it is like, that's the whole part. If you're just trying to recreate like a Kendrick Lamar song, I mean, you're like trying to like recreate it to a T, and you get frustrated because you can't make it exactly like that. Mm-hmm. Like, that's not how you should approach it. You should be trying, try to make it, but don't be frustrated when you don't make it, because whatever you make, that is your sound. Or it's a piece of your sound, even if it's all your sound. But
exactly,
I think that's like such a cool exercise to do as a creative, and it's like, I don't know, but it's definitely the way you should be navigating creating a sound.
Yeah, and it takes a lot of pressure off you too. I think when you can just kind of be yourself and let yourself make mistakes, and happy mistakes half the time end up being the unique things about your creation. Yeah, you know, like things you didn't mean to do in a track, and you're like, oh wait, that sounds pretty cool. Yeah. And then that ends up being the cool thing about it. Yeah. You know?
Yeah, for sure. I wanted to ask you a little bit about, so I know you do music now, but you also balance it with a job on the side. I'd love to hear, what has been your experience sort of doing both, and how have you managed to balance it so far?
Yeah, I think it's like, you can try to balance it, but you can't do it for long. You can't do it forever. And I think it comes down to when it's time to jump. Mm-hmm. And when it's really time to jump, it is time, and that's what you should do. But it's definitely not easy, but it's just what you have to do. You know, there's no other way around it. And I think it's a beautiful life experience when you want to do one thing, but you don't get what you want exactly. Mm-hmm. And you have to figure it out. You know, that's a character building thing. And yeah, I mean, like, Prince was a janitor before he agreed to be a janitor if he got free studio time.
Really?
That was what and I'm definitely not a janitor, but there's nothing wrong with that. No disrespect.
Yeah.
But like, yeah, that's just a part of it.
You
The
know.
truth is that the younger you start, the better, because you have less responsibility and less time.
Yeah.
And I think also it's like being honest with yourself about, are you doing this for fun, or are you trying to like you would die without this creative force, this creative calling in your life.
Yeah.
And I think if that's the case, where this is really your calling, then you got to do whatever it takes. You got to fight. You got to fight for your creation. You got to fight for your creative energy, and you got to protect it and guard it with your life. Like your life depends on it, right?
Yeah.
And I think that's the honest truth. like you work with what you got, but it's a fight, and you have to remain vigilant in doing that.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah, I think that's really important. And yeah, I mean, it's tough, right? Because of course, like as you said, it is like it's a beautiful thing about life. Like you're not always going to get what you want, but if it is something that you really want, like there's going to be challenges, but like you're going to have to like succumb. Like
Sacrifice. Life is sacrifice, right?
Yeah. So one of the last things I wanted to ask, so you I don't know what year it was, but you, alongside being an artist, you also, I mean, you play the guitar, it's part of that, but you also have done some guitar on like the production side of things. Namely, you had a song with Jugger, co-produced with WondaGurl. I'd love to hear what the process of that was like and what's the story.
Yeah, so it's actually funny because I was working job security actually, and I got a call from my friend Genius. He's a producer. He's a really amazing producer, great friend to me, and just a great guy overall. And very nonchalantly, he's like, "Hey man, like, what are you up to?" I was like, "Oh, I'm just chilling, man. What's good?" He's like, "Oh, you should come to the studio." I was like, "Okay, cool. Like, yeah, is it just you?" And he's like, "Yeah, it's just me and Wanda." And I was like, "Oh, okay." Like, my heart skipped a little bit of a beat. Like, my heart skipped a beat a little bit. But I was like, you're playing it cool. You're like, cool. Yeah. I rush home, get my guitar, and then I just drive all the way to the studio. Like, probably spend an hour driving, and I don't know. I just pulled up, and then they played me the track, and they're like, "Yeah, just like do something on it. Just play guitar." Like, well, there's no direction, right? It's just kind of like whatever you're feeling, and then I just did exactly that, and it was an amazing experience. I think that might have been my first time actually in a real studio, which is funny.
Really?
Because I just record everything in my room.
Yeah.
Right? So that was my first time in a real studio, and yeah, those guys are really cool. Like, so much respect to all of them. I love all their work, and it was a really great experience. And I hope to have more like that. And it was cool to find a lane in like hip hop, because obviously what I do is more alternative rock. But it's cool to have a lane in hip hop, I feel like, because guitar is coming back in a way.
Yeah.
And it's having its own resurgence, and there's a space for it.
Yeah.
And I think rather than trying to say that I'm going to be like a hip hop producer or something, I could play guitar on your track. Like, that's just, it's a perfect natural fit. So
Yeah.
it's cool.
Yeah. I mean, thanks so much for hopping on to do an interview.
Of course.
Is there any other piece of advice that you want to give to someone that wants to start making music, basically make some sort of similar style to what you're doing, get to where you're at today?
Do it for you. I'd say don't try to be something. Listen to that voice in here and block the rest of the world out, and become a student of music, and be inspired. Be a fan, I think that the greatest artists are all the biggest fans of someone else. So be a fan and just listen and learn, and listen to your favorite artists, and learn as many instruments as you can.
Yeah.
As young as you can. That will serve you forever.
Yeah.
The more you know, the better. And
Awesome.